Good evening and welcome to Gravitas. I'm Palki, Sharma, Upadhyay. Let's get started. It's been almost 2 weeks since Russia invaded Ukraine. The ripples of this war are now being felt across the world. Countries are bracing for a record high fuel price, $150 per barrel, if I'm to give a number to this nightmare. Russia is the world's third largest oil exporter, second largest according to some estimates. And in this crossfire between the West and Russia, the global oil market has found itself in a hostage situation. In other words, this war has reached your doorsteps, our doorsteps. Ironically enough, most of us had nothing to do with this war. The countries that did are now exploring new avenues. US President Joe Biden is reportedly planning a trip to Saudi Arabia. America is also holding talks with Venezuela. In another part of the world, Russia is crying foul. It says America has been developing bioweapons in Ukraine. These are some very serious allegations, and we'll dwell on the details tonight. We will also take a look at the humanitarian crisis that is unfolding in Europe and the curious case of the letter Z. Day 13 of the invasion, major Ukrainian cities are still being bombed, leading to a humanitarian catastrophe. Up to 2 million people have been forced to flee. The war is spilling out of Ukraine. It is reaching your doorstep. We've been telling you about all of this. The Russian invasion will have repercussions for everyone, for all of us. Russia has issued a new threat to the West now. It will turn off the energy tap. If Russian oil imports are banned, Russia will also stop supplying gas. This is blackmail. Russia is holding the global energy markets hostage, and the West, especially Europe, is fretting. So here's a question. Are Western nations ready to sacrifice their economies? Are they ready to dump Russian oil and gas to save Ukraine? Do they have an alternative? More than one question. And these are very important questions, not just for Europeans, but for all of us. The answers to these questions will determine how much you and I pay for petrol, for fuel. Here's how things stand right now. Oil is on fire. Fueling it is the conflict in Ukraine. Analysts are making doomsday predictions. They say oil will touch $150 per barrel. That's the highest ever recorded price of crude oil, $150 a barrel. What is Brent crude? It is the global benchmark for oil prices. How much is one barrel? Approximately 159 liters. Now, over the weekend, oil crossed $130 per barrel. It was a 14-year high. To put this hike in perspective, let me show you some more numbers. In December, one barrel of crude oil was priced at less than $70 a barrel. We're now in the month of March. The price has almost doubled, 100% jump or thereabouts. And it's not stopping here. By all indications, prices will go up further. That's because the West is considering more sanctions on Russia. Their target this time will be Russian oil. Moscow has called their bluff, though. The Russian deputy prime minister issued a threat. He told the West, if you ban Russian oil, there will be no gas for Europe.
Due to unfounded accusations against Russia regarding the energy crisis in Europe and the imposition of a ban on Nord Stream 2, we have every right to take a mirror decision and impose an embargo on gas transportation through the Nord Stream 1 gas pipeline, which today is loaded at the maximum level of 100%. But so far we have not made this decision. Nobody will benefit from this. All the European politicians are pushing us towards this with their statements and accusations against Russia.
You could say Russia is threatening an energy Armageddon. Analysts say oil will sell at $150. Russia's prediction is much worse, though. It says if their oil is banned, 1 barrel will sell for $300. It's a scary prospect, $300 a barrel. Can Russia do this? Can it really declare an oil war on the world and inflict this kind of damage? Moscow says it can. It is among the top 3 exporters of oil in the world, and the West is among the biggest buyers. They want to punish Moscow for the invasion, but they cannot stop buying Russian oil and gas. Consider these numbers. Even now, Russia sells 5 million barrels of oil every day, 5 million a day. More than half of this is bought by the European Union. How much money does Russia make from this? Around $700 million every day. What about natural gas? 70% of Russian gas exports go to the EU and the UK. Just by selling to Europe, Russia makes $400 million every day. Add the two, and this is what you get. The West pays upwards of $1 billion daily to Russia for oil and gas. So far, the West has kept Russian oil and gas out of its sanctions regime, which means Europe has been funding Putin's war machine. Going by some estimates, Russia has already made more than $100 billion in revenue from oil and gas exports this year, $100 billion. That's over 50% more than what Russia's finance ministry had projected. Moscow has now weaponized the very same supplies. Its message is quite clear. Stay out of Ukraine or run out of gas. And it is a tough choice for Europe. Can they still go ahead and sanction Russia? Reports say Germany, the Netherlands and the UK are having second thoughts. Even the United States remains non-committal.
Well, no decision has been made at this point by the president about a ban on importing oil from Russia, and those discussions are ongoing internally and also with our counterparts and partners in Europe and around the world. I would note that what the president is most focused on is ensuring we are continuing to take steps to deliver punishing economic consequences on Putin, while taking all action necessary to limit the impact to prices at the gas pump.
That could change as we speak. Multiple sources say the US will ban Russian oil, but remember, America's dependence on Russia is quite low. Only 8% of Russian oil goes to the United States. So if Europe does not join these sanctions, America's ban will be largely symbolic. So as things stand, the West keeps talking about punishing economic consequences. That's a phrase they've often used. But they haven't been able to ban Russian oil and gas. They're protecting their economies and they're bankrolling Russia's war. Ukraine continues to bleed and the rest of the world has begun to suffer because Western sanctions have created a panic in the market. There is no interruption, no disruption of Russian supplies yet. But the fear of curbs has pushed up oil prices the world over. India, too, is feeling the heat. It is being forced to pay more for fuel. At the current prices, India's oil import bill could rise by $60 billion. India's crude oil import bill is set to exceed $100 billion. And there's more bad news. The Indian rupee is weakening. $1 is now worth almost 77 rupees. It's a lifetime low. The stock market saw some recovery after yesterday's carnage. What about oil prices? They haven't been hiked yet, but it's only a matter of time. Russia's war means biting inflation for all of us. Well, how do you combat that inflation? The best solution is to end the war. But that's not happening anytime soon. The next option is to increase oil output. Well, that's what Joe Biden is trying to do. Pump more oil. Stabilize the global energy market. The question is, how will he do it? He is releasing America's strategic reserves, but that's a temporary solution. In the long run, Joe Biden needs oil-producing nations to help him, to step up. Countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they have the capacity to do so. But do they have the political will? Joe Biden's West Asia policy has offended his allies. Chief among them is Saudi Arabia. He declassified files that implicated the kingdom in 2 major incidents, 9/11 and the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. Biden was more interested in lectures than partnerships. Well, now he's been forced to rethink. Reports say Joe Biden is considering a trip to Saudi Arabia. 2 goals there. In the short run, get Riyadh to produce more oil, and in the long run, repair the bilateral ties. Neither will be easy. Expensive oil is good for Russia, But it isn't good just for Russia, it's also good for Saudi Arabia. It means more profits. If Riyadh sacrifices this profit, it will need something in return. Perhaps more defense exports, perhaps fewer lectures on freedoms, and more support in the Yemen war. Last week, the Saudi Crown Prince made some interesting comments. He said he doesn't care if Biden misunderstands him. Well, that should set the tone for any meeting between these two leaders. Next on Joe Biden's checklist is Venezuela. Now, this will be even more difficult. For starters, the US does not support President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela. They support his rival, Juan Guaido. Washington has also placed heavy sanctions on Venezuela. But on Monday, they sent a delegation to Caracas. President Maduro says the talks were cordial.
As I said to the delegation, I reaffirm all our willingness based on diplomacy, respect and the utmost hope for a better world to move forward on an agenda that allows for the well-being and peace of the people of our hemisphere, of our region.
So what changed? For starters, Venezuela is an oil-producing nation. Right now, their oil industry is under sanctions. They cannot sell oil in the global market. If Washington lifts those sanctions, that changes. More oil enters the market, the prices gradually stabilize. Secondly, Venezuela is a key Russian ally, possibly Putin's best bet in Latin America at the moment. So if Joe Biden can force Nicolas Maduro to switch sides, it would further isolate Moscow. The plan sounds great, but there are two major problems. Number one, Venezuela's oil industry is in the dumps. In the 1990s, they produced 3.2 million barrels per day. Today, around 800,000. So Venezuela does not have the capacity to fill the gaps. Reason number two, Maduro does not want a strategic realignment. He wants the US to lift those sanctions. That's it. He does not want an alliance with Joe Biden. Third on America's list is Iran. Now, this could be a game changer if it happens. Iran can produce up to 4 million barrels every day. If they re-enter the oil market, prices could stabilize. But for that, the nuclear deal must be revived. Sanctions must be lifted. What's the status on that? The US says they're getting closer to a deal, but Russia is playing hardball.
We have requested the American colleagues to give us written guarantees, at least at the level of the Secretary of State, so that the current process launched by the United States will not by any means affect our rights for a free and full-fledged trade, economic, military and investment cooperation with Iran.
Any deal struck in Vienna will have to be cleared by Vladimir Putin. So here too, there is no guarantee of success, but the plan is quite clear. Isolate Russia further, close off all avenues of cooperation. Iran and Venezuela were Putin's backup plan. His strategy to blunt Western sanctions. So Joe Biden is trying to wrest them away. Chances are both efforts will end in failure. America may lift sanctions, but politically, Iran and Venezuela will never side with them. So that's Biden's game plan. What about Putin's? What is he up to? Russia cannot survive with support from just Iran and Venezuela. It needs a bigger player. And Putin is hoping that bigger player will be China. What is the response from Beijing? Well, here's what Foreign Minister Wang Yi said.
The development of China-Russia relations has a clear historical logic and a strong endogenous driving force. The friendship between the two peoples is rock solid. No matter how sinister the international situation is, both China and Russia will maintain their strategic focus and continuously push forward the comprehensive strategic partnership of cooperation in the new era.
In other words, come what may, China will not abandon Russia. I know it sounds resolute, but this is China. At the first sign of trouble, they will bolt. We have already seen indications of this. At the United Nations, China has refused to back Russia. The UN voted thrice on Russia and China abstained all 3 times. Same with sanctions. China may be sparring with the West, but they still use Western technology. They need swift payment systems. They need Western internet infrastructure. So if Chinese companies get caught in this crossfire, Beijing will bolt. And this leaves both leaders out of their comfort zone, Biden and Putin. Putin is used to bossing world leaders around. He's been leading Russia for more than 2 decades. He's the top dog in most rooms. With China, that changes. At this rate, Putin will need Xi Jinping to keep his country afloat, and that power imbalance will irk Vladimir Putin. As for Joe Biden, he will have to shelve his so-called lectures. Saudi Arabia has a poor rights record. So do Iran and Venezuela. But if Biden wants to truly isolate Russia, he will have to move out of his comfort zone. He will have to court leaders he normally would not. And neither leader will enjoy this. But that's the cost of international politics. So as Joe Biden mulls his diplomatic options, Russian tanks are advancing in Ukraine. Most of them carry mysterious symbols. One such symbol is making global headlines, the letter Z. It's become a subject of intense debate. Everyone's trying to guess what it means. Some say it's a military marking, others say it's a warning. As this debate continues, and there's a lot of speculation around it, back in Russia, the symbol has become a trend of sorts. Russian nationalists are using it in their rallies. Russian citizens have emblazoned it on their cars. But what does the symbol really mean for them? Here's a report.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine has a new symbol, one that doesn't even exist in the Russian alphabet. The letter Z. It's present everywhere. On the back of Russian tanks, on billboards in Russian cities, on the vehicles of Russian citizens, on the t-shirts of Russian nationalists, even on the uniform of Russian athletes. There are Z stickers everywhere you turn. Russian lawmakers are dabbing it on their clothes. Russian activists are using it in their demonstrations.
За Россию! За президента! За Россию! За Путина!
What in the world is this symbol? Is it a mere military marking? Is it a symbol of Russian solidarity, or is it just a state-induced meme? There is no clear answer, only a host of theories. Some say the Z is short for Za Pobedi, a Russian term which translates to for victory. They say Russian troops are using it to identify their vehicles. Others say this term is short for Zapad, the Russian term for the West, which is being used to identify the destination of Russian infantries. And yet, others say the Z might stand for the Kremlin's current enemy, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. So there's no consensus among Russians on what this mysterious symbol really means. The Ukrainians, meanwhile, have drawn their own conclusions.
You declare the war. It is the responsibility of
This is Sergei Kislitsya, the Ukrainian ambassador to the UN. He says this symbol stands for Zaveri, a Russian term for beasts or animals. Then we have Oleksiy Reznikov, the defense minister of Ukraine. He says the symbol was part of the Hakenkreuz, the Nazi symbol of hate. He claims that in 1943, the Nazis had designated a concentration camp as Station Z, a place where they carried out mass murder of Jews. This theory is being widely circulated. Several social media commentators claim that Putin's supporters are painting apartment doors of his critics or of those opposing his invasion of Ukraine with this letter. Others say that Russian troops are drawing this letter out of the badges of slain Ukrainian soldiers. So from identity to national pride, to murderous rage. This symbol has come to represent a lot of things. Is it because we're reading too much into it? From where we see it, this symbol could be just another part of Russian war tactics. From a triangle with two lines, to a white circle, to a bright red X. Moscow is using a host of suspicious characters in this war. For all we know, these symbols could just be tags to identify which unit is heading where.
The Cold War dictionary is making a comeback. We're hearing about iron curtains, nuclear deterrence, non-alignment. What about mediation? Even during the Cold War, we had peace brokers, countries that would reach out to both sides. This time too, there are mediators, 4 of them. President Emmanuel Macron of France, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett of Israel, Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India, and President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey. Each of them has a distinct relationship with Russia and the West. Let's start with President Macron. He is working the phone lines hard. Since Russia's invasion, Macron has spoken to Putin 4 times. All 4 conversations reached a dead end, but Macron is not giving up. He feels Russia's security interests must be accommodated. What's in it for him? For starters, Macron is up for re-election this year, and nothing sells more than ending a war. Secondly, France has generally been wary of blindly following the US. We saw that during the Iraq war. And we are seeing it now. Macron prefers a European response to Russia. After all, the war is in Europe, not in America. Also, France was hit by AUKUS last year, remember, and it knows better about American alliances. The second mediator is Naftali Bennett. Now, this was a bit of a surprise. Bennett has dialed Putin thrice since the invasion. He also made a surprise visit to Moscow on Saturday. After the trip, he briefed Zelensky on the progress. So Bennett is keeping both lines open. Again, the question, why? Why is Israel mediating a European crisis? Reports say because Zelensky requested it. Israel and Russia do have military cooperation on Syria, on the Iran nuclear deal. So Bennett does have a working relationship with Putin. Plus, there is an emotional aspect. The Jewish community in Ukraine, it is centuries old. The president, Volodymyr Zelensky, is himself Jewish. So Israel does have a stake in this war. The third mediator is Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He has spoken with President Putin 3 times. Initially, the emphasis was on evacuation. More than 20,000 Indians were stuck in Ukraine. Their safe passage was top priority. Now the emphasis is changing. On Monday, Prime Minister Modi had a constructive suggestion, a direct conversation between Putin and Zelensky. And this signals an evolution of India's position from abstention to active engagement. And India has the clout to do this. It shares a strategic relationship with both Russia and the West. Once the evacuation is done, New Delhi can step up diplomatic efforts. The fourth mediator is President Erdogan of Turkey. Again, he has clout on both sides. Turkey has excellent relations with Russia and Ukraine. If you think about it, Turkey's mediation is a contradiction. Ukraine is using Turkish drones to take out Russian soldiers and tanks, but the very same Turkey is also pushing for talks. So Erdogan is not mediating as much as playing both sides. On Thursday, he's hosting a very important meeting. Foreign ministers from Ukraine and Russia are flying down to Antalya. It will be the first high-level engagement since the war broke out.
Separately, Lavrov said he is ready to attend the meeting in Antalya. At the same time, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba told us he will also attend. Both ministers asked me to particularly take part in this meeting and have a 3-way dialogue.
Like I said, each mediator has a distinct relationship, a distinct national interest. France wants peace and stability in Europe. Israel wants Russian military cooperation. India wants safe passage for its people. Turkey wants to reaffirm its commitment to NATO. The question is, will they be successful? Well, on the face of it, talks may appear pointless, especially when airstrikes are on in the background. But open lines of communication are very important. I can give you 3 reasons why. Number 1, it offers an exit route for Russia. Right now, there is immense pressure on Putin, economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, military setbacks. If, in Putin's own words, cornering someone is never a good idea. And that's where mediators come in. Reason number 2, it avoids miscalculations and military errors. Take the nuclear plants, for instance. When Macron spoke to Putin, he raised the risk of a nuclear accident. To discuss issues like these, you need open lines of communication. And reason number 3, it helps humanitarian operations, whether it's evacuations, aid missions, ceasefires. Simply put, without mediation, this war will linger. Having said that, mediation alone cannot help very much. Ultimately, it's up to Ukraine and Russia to end this fighting. Getting them on the same table. That's all that the mediators can do. And to do that, you need clarity. You need honest and open communication. Right now, that's missing. Russia and Ukraine have launched a volley of claims and counterclaims. It's becoming impossible, really, to verify any of it. The latest allegation is this: bioweapons. Russia claims it has uncovered 30 biolabs in Ukraine, 30 biolabs in Ukraine. What happened to these labs? What happened at these labs, rather? According to Russia, weaponization. They were making biological weapons. They claim America was developing bioweapons in Ukraine. Listen to this.
It is obvious that in the wake of the special military operation, the Pentagon started having serious concerns about secret biological experiments uncovered on the Ukrainian territory. The uncovered documents confirm that components for chemical weapons were developed in Ukrainian biolabs in immediate proximity to Russia.
That is a serious allegation. Before we examine it, let me give you some background, in fact. What is a bioweapon? It can be a toxin or a deadly pathogen, basically something that attacks humans from the inside. How are bioweapons deployed? Just like any other weapon, you can use missiles, grenades or rockets. Are they legal? Well, absolutely not. Multiple conventions ban the development and use of bioweapons. The most important one is the BWC of 1975. BWC is the Biological Weapons Convention. What does it say? It says that you cannot develop, produce, acquire, transfer, stockpile or use any kind of biological weapon. It's a strict no in warfare. Coming back to Russia's allegation, what exactly have they uncovered? 30 labs with incriminating documents. That's what Russia claims. These documents allegedly expose America's operation to develop bioweapons, specifically the plague, anthrax and rabbit fever. Did they also find any stockpiles? Well, this is where things get interesting. Russia claims Ukraine destroyed the entire stock last month. Listen to this.
During the course of the special military operation, facts were uncovered of the Kiev regime mopping up traces of military biological programs under development in Ukraine, financed by the US Defense Ministry.
Sounds a bit convenient, doesn't it? If the stockpile was destroyed, why not the documents? Why would Ukraine leave incriminating papers lying around? It simply doesn't add up. And this is not an isolated incident. Russia has made countless wild allegations. Here's another one. Russia's state media claims Ukraine is making a nuclear bomb at Chernobyl. Again, this is a very serious accusation, and again, there is no evidence. Here's what the United Nations Atomic Watchdog had to say.
We do not have any information that would question the non-proliferation credentials of the Ukraine. It's important to say, as I indicated earlier in the press conference, that we continue our safeguards operation, and we do not have any information that there is any deviation of material, any undeclared material, or activities leading to the development of nuclear weapons.
Once the war is over, all of these claims will be analyzed. There will be investigations, there will be political standoffs. But until then, there must be restraint. False accusations cannot be used to justify a war. Non-existent weapons cannot be an excuse to invade. And this applies to every country, not just Russia. Let me take you back to February 2003. America was preparing to invade Iraq. At the United Nations, there was a last-minute presentation. It was given by this man, former U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell. What did he say? That Iraq was building biological weapons, that Iraq could deliver anthrax via drones. America used these lies to invade Iraq. Today, Russia is using similar lies to invade Ukraine. The fact is both nations are wrong. Washington set the precedent. Moscow is following it. And China is latching on to it. It gets more interesting. Let me quote what the foreign ministry said. We once again urge the U.S. side to fully clarify its biological military activities both at home and abroad and accept multilateral verifications. What is the real intention of the United States? What exactly has it done? These have always been the source of misgivings for the international community. This is China speaking. You have to appreciate the audacity. It's borderline hilarious. Just 2 years ago, China exported a deadly virus to the whole world. They hid the ground reality. They refused multilateral verifications. And today, that same China is preaching. For the record, we still don't know how the Wuhan virus emerged. Was it a lab leak? Was it a species jump? We don't know. And China blocks every attempt to investigate it. Now, I'm not saying that America should get a free pass. Nobody should. Claims of bioweapons are serious. They must be probed rigorously. Having said that, this principle must apply universally. By all means, investigate the labs of Kharkiv, but also investigate the labs of Wuhan. Also, this must not become an established precedent. We have watchdogs to verify illegal experiments. We have United Nations agencies to punish violations. Global powers cannot take these laws into their own hands. Just think about it. What if China claims the US is making bioweapons in Taiwan tomorrow? Would there be another invasion? At this rate, anything is possible. All these wild allegations and counter-allegations, they're only a symbol of a larger problem, a global order that no one takes seriously anymore. What about Vladimir Putin himself? Well, he ordered this offensive to push Western forces out of his backyard, he says. What did he do with his family? Where are they? What do they think about Russia's invasion of Ukraine? Well, we might never know. No one knows where they are. One man's claims have triggered speculation. He says Putin's family is inside a secret bunker, one that can survive a nuclear strike. Here's a report.
Vladimir Putin's plans for Ukraine are a mystery for the world. The bigger mystery, however, are the whereabouts of his family. Since the war began, they have been out of the public eye. Their disappearance has ignited wild conspiracy theories, like this one. This man claims he knows where Putin's family is. His name is Valery Solovey. Solovey used to be a professor in Moscow. He says Putin moved his family to a bunker in Serbia. Solovey says this bunker is as big as a city. It can survive a nuclear strike, and it is equipped with the latest technology. There are few who are taking these claims seriously. Solovey has a reputation of floating wild conspiracy theories. A tabloid too has weighed in on the whereabouts of Putin's family. This one claims Putin's daughters are in Switzerland. They are said to be with the Russian president's alleged mistress, Alina Kabaeva. Moscow is unlikely to confirm or deny this, because that's how the Russian president wants it. Reports say Putin despises questions about his personal life. He has been in the public life for more than 20 years. Even today, not much is known about his family. In 1983, the Russian president had married Lyudmila Putina, a former flight attendant. They had 2 daughters, Maria and Katerina. Putin and Putina divorced in 2014. Since then, the Russian president has been linked to 2 women, millionaire Svetlana Krivonogik and former gymnast Alina Kabaeva. But Putin has never confirmed these relationships. He does not like talking about his wealth either. Putin is widely considered to be one of the richest men in the world, but according to the West, these assets are secret. The United States and Europe want to freeze them, but for that they must first find them. The Russian president could have wealth in excess of $100 billion and assets in several Russian companies, primarily in the oil sector. This luxurious superyacht is also believed to be owned by Vladimir Putin. It was in Germany before the Ukraine invasion began. Reports say around 6 days before the Russian forces attacked, this superyacht sailed back to Russia. It was called back well before its repairs could have been completed. Needless to say, the Kremlin chooses to ignore all such reports. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Now let's talk about those caught in the crossfire, the civilians. More than 1,000 have died. At least 2 million Ukrainians have fled their country. Russia has once again announced humanitarian corridors. They branch out of 5 major cities. Now, first things first, what is a humanitarian corridor? These are basically temporary demilitarized zones. Think of them as safe routes, roads where there will be no shelling, bombing, or crossfire for a certain period of time. Humanitarian corridors are supposed to help those fleeing the war, also those bringing life-saving aid for the people trapped in the war. I'm talking about food, water, medical supplies, basically any kind of essential commodities. 5 humanitarian corridors / routes have been identified. They branch out of 5 cities, like I said, the capital Kiev, Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv and Mariupol. All of these cities have come under heavy attack. A ceasefire is currently in place so that people can escape these cities and escape through safe routes. Where do these routes go? This is where the story becomes twisted. The previous corridors proposed by Russia mostly led to Russia or Belarus. The first corridor, for instance, went from Kiev to Russia via Belarus, this one. The second one, from Chernihiv to Russia, again via Belarus. Now, reports say those leaving Sumy or Mariupol had a choice. They could either go to Russia or to Ukrainian cities like Poltava and Zaporizhia. Kiev rejected these corridors, though.
Russian side has already sent us a letter with routes to Russia and Belarus only. I call on the Russian side to reverse to the previously agreed routes to allow Ukrainian and foreign citizens to leave for Europe.
Russia denied the allegation and insisted that it was up to the refugees to decide where they wanted to go.
This proposal doesn't have any demands about the citizens being sent necessarily to Russia into Russian territory. There is also evacuation offered towards Ukrainian cities to the west of Kiev. And ultimately it will be the choice of the people themselves where they want to be evacuated to.
A new plan was drafted after this tussle. Another ceasefire was announced. It came into effect at 7 a.m. GMT, that's 12:30 p.m. IST today. What you see on your screen are Ukrainians leaving Sumy and a suburb of Kiev.
Many soldiers in my city, Russian soldiers, and killing people.
Они сейчас целенаправленно стреляют по жилым комплексам. Они уже не стреляют по объектам.
The question is, how long will these corridors remain safe? And I ask this because humanitarian corridors have previously come under attack. On the 5th of March, Russia announced a ceasefire in Mariupol. The two sides agreed to create humanitarian corridors, safe routes. The attempt failed. The same drill played out the next day. Russia says the Ukrainians are shelling their own people. Western experts point the finger at Russia, and they cite Syria. At the height of the civil war in Syria, remember, Russia would often offer humanitarian corridors, then allegedly break the ceasefire and attack those who are taking those safe routes out. This is the West's argument. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says humanitarian corridors are a part of Russian propaganda.
These are not people. There was an agreement on green corridors. Has it worked? What worked instead was Russian tanks, Russian mines. They even mined the road that it was agreed would be used to bring in food, medicines for children, for the people of Mariupol. They even destroy buses that are meant to evacuate people. At the same time, they open a tiny corridor leading to the occupied territory for a couple of dozen of people. Not so much to Russia as to their propaganda people, their TV cameras saying, look, who is saving people? Plain cynicism, plain propaganda.
French President Emmanuel Macron has accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of quote-unquote moral and political cynicism. Macron said he finds it intolerable that the humanitarian corridors are leading to Russia or Belarus. So far, almost 2 million people have left Ukraine. Most of them have gone to Belarus, Poland, Russia, Moldova, Romania, Hungary, Slovakia, France, and other European Union countries. These refugees, some of them have arrived in France. They left behind their loved ones. Men have had to stay back to fight. Many mothers and grandmothers also decided to stay back.
My husband is not the only one who stayed in Odessa. There's also my family, my father, my mother, my grandmothers.
Just before what happened with my partner, we were preparing for our wedding, which was set for February 27th. With what happened, we were able to get married on February 24th, right before I left. That same night, I left.
24-го ввечері я поїхала з Києва, тому що було дуже небезпечно залишатись.
As politicians battle it out over their version of history from bunkers, it's these people whose lives have been turned upside down by the war. Speaking of having lives turned upside down, let's tell you what's happening in China. The Wuhan virus is on a rampage. The worst hit is Hong Kong. What I'm about to show you next is disturbing, let me warn you. These pictures came to us last week. There is no place to store dead bodies in Hong Kong. Funeral homes are overflowing. Almost 150 people are dying every day, so refrigerated shipping containers are being hired. It gets worse. Hospitals have been forced to install tents. They've run out of beds. Food supplies are running out. Shelves are empty at supermarkets again. Just today, more than 43,000 cases were reported. This high infection rate has sparked fears of a lockdown in Hong Kong, and this has led to panic buying. Such images are not new. This was a frequent sight, remember, in 2020 and 2021 during the first and the second waves. The world did not have vaccines then, not enough vaccines last year. Global healthcare systems were not prepared for the Wuhan virus outbreak. They did not have the capacity to deal with a virus that multiplies so quickly. Across the world, the situation is better now, thankfully. But that list does not include Hong Kong. The Omicron-induced surge has been around for almost 3 months. Hong Kong is still struggling to tame the virus because it is sticking to a failed playbook to deal with the virus. I'm talking about zero COVID. China still continues to stick with this policy of zero COVID, the policy of mass testing and lockdowns. When the first cases were tested in December, Hong Kong ordered its first round of mass tests. That failed to stop fresh infections. More than 2,000 people have died in this surge alone, and these are the official figures. What is Hong Kong's solution? More tests. Hong Kong has a population of more than 7 million. Each of them, every single person living in Hong Kong, will now have to take not one, not two, but 3 compulsory Wuhan virus tests. This move has been widely criticized. Reports say the local administration is rethinking the decision, and Hong Kongers are furious. Here's what one of the residents said. They're making it impossible to live here. It's ridiculous what's going on. It's like the blind leading the blind. The rules change every day. Hong Kong's outbreak is spreading to the mainland. New infections are rising rapidly in China. Today, the country reported its biggest one-day spike since the 2020 Wuhan outbreak, the biggest in 2 years almost. More than 500 new cases were found. Omicron has now been identified in nearly a dozen cities in China. This includes Shanghai, Xi'an, Suzhou, Qingdao and Wenzhou. Just this weekend, 17 out of 31 provinces of China reported new infections. That's what China is officially reporting. Let me repeat that. The actual numbers could be very different, much higher perhaps. Earlier, China had claimed that it had vaccinated 80% of its population. If that is the case, why is Beijing failing to tame new outbreaks? The simple answer would be Chinese vaccines are not working. Chinese shots are ineffective against the virus from China. But there is a deeper reason, some say, behind China's failure. And the reason is this. China is still relying on a failed model to fight the pandemic. China's vast hospital network still remains vulnerable. Beijing may build hospitals quickly and use it as a propaganda video. But not all of these are equipped to handle a Wuhan virus surge. Distribution of resources is lopsided. Investment on improving infrastructure is low. China's latest Wuhan virus surge comes during a key meeting in Beijing. The National People's Congress, perhaps the most important event for the Communist Party every year. The Chinese leadership sets targets for itself at this gathering. The Omicron outbreak has barely found a mention so far. That should tell you about China's priorities. And as long as that remains the case, the world will remain vulnerable to more outbreaks from China. So here's what we have this Tuesday. A war underway in Europe, chances of a nuclear tragedy. There are reports of biolabs in the making. And the Wuhan virus has made a comeback in China. No such new crises in Pakistan, though. It is grappling with old ones. Terror attacks have not stopped. Neither have anti-government protests, nor Pakistan's obsession with India. It's life as usual there. On Friday, Peshawar was hit by a suicide bomb attack. 57 people died, 194 were injured. On Saturday, anti-government protests were reported in Lahore and Islamabad. Baloch activists demonstrated over the disappearance of their friends and family. Then came Sunday. Prime Minister Imran Khan held a road show near Multan. Why? Perhaps because he felt like it. What did he talk about? Not the attacks in Peshawar, not the protests by Balochis, but the ongoing war in Ukraine. What's that got to do with Pakistan? A lot, says Imran Khan. He says he's under pressure to condemn Russia. Under pressure by whom? Western countries. Apparently, they wanted Pakistan to support a resolution against Russia. This was at the United Nations General Assembly. Reports also say that envoys from 22 Western countries sent a letter seeking Pakistan's support. Now, to be clear, it was just a request, not an ultimatum. But Imran Khan has a habit of making a hill out of a mole, it seems. So he made a big fuss about the letter. He said, why don't Western leaders make the same request to India? Listen to what he said.
यूरोपियन यूनियन के एम्बेसडर ने खत लिखा पाकिस्तान को कि आप रूस के खिलाफ उसके मुखालिफ स्टेटमेंट दें, उसके खिलाफ वोट दें। मैं ये यूरोपियन यूनियन के एम्बेसडर से पूछता हूं कि क्या आपने हिंदुस्तान को भी ये खत लिखा था?
You heard him. Did you write to India too, asks Imran Khan. Well, they might have. And that's how diplomacy works. Countries lobby for each other's support all the time. Sometimes they agree, sometimes they refuse if it doesn't suit them. What they do not do is use such requests as political weapons in rallies. Plus, the West understands and accepts India's strategic autonomy. New Delhi has never sided with any power bloc. Not my circus, not my monkeys. That's been India's policy throughout, unlike Pakistan, which tends to dance at two weddings at the same time. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Imran Khan was in Moscow calling the atmosphere exciting. That's the word he used. It's exciting. 2 days before that, his ambassador met with a senior official from Ukraine and reaffirmed Pakistan's support for Ukraine's sovereignty. So which side are they on, really? Being a former cricketer and a media personality, Imran Khan would know a thing or two about timing and messaging. You can't be visiting Moscow during a war and not expect the West to corner you. Well, he's accused them of hypocrisy and for treating Pakistan like a slave. I'd like you to listen to him again.
क्या आप में से किसी ने हिंदुस्तान से कोई राब्ता तोड़ा, कोई उनकी तनकीद की, कोई तिजारत बंद की? तो हम आपके सामने क्या हैं? क्या हम कोई गुलाम हैं कि जो आप कहेंगे हम कर लें?
Let me translate that for you. What do you think of us? Are we your slaves? Well, I have some thoughts on this, but I'll let the numbers do the talking. Pakistan is America's largest recipient of foreign assistance. In the last 1 decade, Washington has given Islamabad $7.7 billion in funds. Same with the UK. Pakistan is the largest recipient of foreign development aid from the United Kingdom. Between 2019 and 2020, London gave Islamabad £302 million. And these are just two examples. Pakistan has taken aid and loans from every conceivable source in the world. Now, when you've taken this kind of money and not returned a single penny, you should not complain about being treated like a slave. And if you do, you better have the bank balance and the political will to return the money. Unfortunately for Imran Khan, he has neither money or will. For all we know, he could be on his way out. Pakistan's opposition has brought a no-confidence motion against the Prime Minister. They've given Imran Khan a 24-hour ultimatum. Resign in the next 24 hours or get ousted through a no-confidence vote. That's what the opposition says. Why are they so confident? Well, they claim to have the support of 202 lawmakers. Let's break it down for you. 202 is way more than what they need. The National Assembly of Pakistan has 342 seats. Imran Khan plus allies have 177. The opposition has 162. The halfway mark is 172. That's the number you need, 172, to dethrone Imran Khan. But the opposition says they have more than 200. And if they're right, Imran Khan will lose power. Unless, of course, the Pakistan army springs a surprise. It looks unlikely. But remember, this is Pakistan. Nothing should be ruled out. We'll be watching the situation. We're wrapping the show, leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching.
Не плач, не плач. На тобі, дивись. Дивись, вона.
Ні, це не поможе зараз.
Ну тримай, тримай.
Ні, йому папа.
Держи.
Зараз папа прийде, Артур.